have the kids come up and we'll do penny mark this morning. Give this kid a big hand around. All right, everyone, we'll be up to the choir.
Bright 81.
This song will fellowship one another together in prayer.
Ed might have lost him at the roulette wheel. Way out there.
Sheep in the living room floor.
How do you think you want to be up there? How do you think you want to be up there? So. I'll know what to tell you.
All right, this woman has something someone like church prayer about.
Remember the Greenup County cheerleaders in the parade today as they go to national.
Anyone else? Remember one another this morning, they pulled my heart and prayers, kind of blood and grit, and brings a message. There's songs and testimonies. It's been all over the nursing home hospitals, and all those battling cancer. Remember all those lost loved ones. Remember Stephen this morning, he's got the flu, so keep him in prayer. So remember Matthew, remember Dad and Grandma. Anyone else? Let's remember the church this morning. And keep this going. Anyone else would go to Lord in prayer? I know we all have lost loved ones, friends like Steve would say that. I'm going to ask Brother Britt to listen to Lord in prayer.
Father God, thank you for your grace and your
congregation that are here today. Help with the Lord, prayers and help the Father, help the
All right, who this morning would have a song or testimony in their heart?
Siri's looking for help. She's in the right place. She's in the right place.
Well, I'd like to stand up and just thank the Lord for everything He's done for me. It's a privilege to serve our God. He's a God, He's everywhere at all times. He knows everything, He hears everything, He is everything. And that, you know, we might be able to hide things from people here on this earth, but we want to hide anything from Him. But I just want to thank you for all He's done for me, and all He's going to do. I just want to pray, Father, that things will keep going here for the church, that we can get things, get a bigger crowd, and more coming in, and more souls saved. I just pray, Father, everything will work out for us. We'll continue in life, and He'll be with us and help us in all things.
Amen.
Praise His name, and give Him praise forever.
Amen. Anyone else this morning? Song?
David sang the praises of the glory of Jehovah. Paul preached that all is lost save knowing Christ. Little John said he is precious by leaning on his bosom. So for a moment may I humbly testify. Did I mention that I love him? How I worship and adore him when I can see no way. He makes a way, and did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. How many sermons can be preached about this Jesus? How many songs can be sung about God's Son? There are not enough words, enough notes in the music to tell stories all the Savior has done. Did I mention that I love him? How I worship and adore him when I can see no way. He makes a way, and did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. Did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. I love him, that's all I want to
Anyone else this morning? Amen.
And it was, oh, I just love my Lord, and I praise him for everything he has done. He picks me up and carries me on through, and I love him for it.
Amen. Amen. Anyone else this morning? Song or testimony?
Thank you for each and every day. Good morning. It's his privilege to be here, to hear the word. He gave us his mouth, it's his house. Come, hear his words, it's bring you pain. You know, we said like this morning, I said, they said, time to ring the bell. And let people know where they should be at.
Amen.
They should be at, and they can let me. I just pray, I love him. I love this church. Praise his name.
Amen. Anyone else this morning? Song or testimony? All right, junior church. Do you have anything else I'd like to add before I call the preachers? Come on, brother.
Morning. Good to be here this morning. You're looking proud. I had a good time last Sunday, didn't you all? Had a good time Wednesday night. Went home full and had a sugar crash. You missed it, that's your fault. I want to thank God for allowing us all to be out here this morning. Girls are, Ellen stayed with a friend last night, and Karen's going to pick her up. And Audrey stayed with Mom last night. Thank you, brother. Audrey stayed with Mom last night, and they slept in this morning. So they're having a Sabbath today. They're resting. So we had them out all day yesterday. Elle's and everything coming and going, but they're fine. Several of you have asked about them. They're not sick. They're fine. They're just being kids for a little while today. We're going to be in 1 Peter chapter 4 and chapter 5, talking about the same thing. First Peter chapter 4, verse 7. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7. We'll read 2 verses here and then 2 verses in chapter 5. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7 says, "But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. And above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover a multitude of sins." Verse 9 says, "Use hospitality one to another without grudging." Read 3 verses there. That's 3. Chapter 5 may be on the same page, maybe a page over. Chapter 5, verse 8 and 9. Says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world." Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God in heaven, we thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to come out this morning. Dear Father, we thank you, dear Lord, for your grace and your mercy. We thank you, dear Father, for the call, dear Lord, that you put in our heart this morning to come be at the house of you, dear Lord, to come listen to your word, dear Father. Father, we just ask, dear Lord, that you open hearts and minds, dear Lord. I ask that you use me and speak through me this morning. That's your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. "So the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer." We think about that word, we think about sober, and oftentimes when we think about sober, the opposite word comes to mind, and that's drunk, right? And I've been in both situations. I'm currently sober this morning, I'm happy to report. But I've been on the other end of that spectrum as well. But as we see this, and this is not talking about, what Peter here is not talking about solely and specifically drunkenness as we would think about it. Peter's not talking about the bottom of a bottle or several bottles, depending on whatever your preference may be, if you've ever had one. Peter's talking about here sobriety and the fact that we're sober-minded. Sober-minded. And you think about that, there's a lot of different ways in which we can take our focus off the Lord. There's a lot of different things that we can do to take our focus off the Lord. It doesn't have to be a bottle, and I'm not talking about any kind of drug, or I'm not talking about any kind of other thing, other than anything that takes our mind off of God. Anything that gives us clarity in the world, that gives us cloudiness with the Lord. You think about that, and the world is full of things that can give us, take our focus off the Lord. Be ye sober, be ye therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. Sobriety, and the sober fact of it is, the sober fact of the matter is this life is going to end. That's it. And if that doesn't sober you up, then I don't really know what will. That this life, in this fleshly body, is going to come to an end. Now this life, we have choices, right? We have choices, and we've been talking about that in our Bible study. But this life, the choices that we bring about are choices of man. And Peter talks about that here in chapter 4, talks about the Gentiles, and he talks about the choices that are unto man, and then there's choices that are unto God. If we're in the flesh, the choices that we make, the consequences of, are just of man, right? Our words and our actions, our consequences are just of man. Meaning, if we look at how we act, if we do something wrong, we get locked up for it. Or we go to, a lot of people go before a judge and get turned loose, or whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is anything that we endure here in this life, at the end of this life, the sobering fact is we are going to stand before God. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. Nobody wants to talk about that anymore. The end of life, when I stand before God. That should be a sobering fact to you every day of your life. Everything that you think about and everything that you do, that should be the sobering fact that I'm going to stand before God. Thinking about that, sober-mindedness, meaning it is clear to me. Now, a sober mind is a clear mind, right? What can cloud up our mind? Satan can. Satan can cloud up our mind in a lot of ways. Over in verse 5 it says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Whom resist steadfast in faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. The ESV version says, in verse 9 says, resist him, firm in your faith, know that the same kinds of suffering that you are experiencing by your brotherhood are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. You're not alone. You're not alone in your dealings with Satan. You're not alone in your fight to be sober-minded. There are others that are doing that. One of the things that we have a hard time doing, especially guys. Especially guys. Girls, not so much. Now, there's exceptions to every rule. But I can speak on behalf of men because God made me to be one. We don't like that stop and ask for help, do we, guys? And Shelley, I'm not talking on that. Don't speak on his behalf.
I've never thought of it.
Uh-oh. Hey guys, how many of you have driven for a half an hour, or however long the case may be, before you stop to ask for directions? They're not going, I don't want to show a hand. I'd have to put mine up too. Sober-minded. How many of us have how many of us have needed help with something and we don't want to ask anybody for it? We'll sit for an hour or 2 hours and come up with a way that we can do it by ourselves. Do it by ourselves. Dad and I are the world's worst at that. We live less than a mile apart. And we will offer help. But our answers to each other are always, no, I got it. I'll do it. Now, it may take us a long time to get whatever the case may be done, but when we work together, things get done a lot faster, things get done a lot easier. What we're being told here is that whatever the devil is after you about, somebody else is having that problem. Somebody in the world is having that problem. You know, Satan's good at thinking that we're alone. Satan is good at telling us, that we are alone in our fight. Well, don't bring that up in church. Don't bring that up to your brothers and sisters. Don't bring that up to your family. Don't tell nobody. They won't understand. There's nobody in the world that understands grief except you. So don't bring that up. There's nobody in the world that understands anxiety. There's nobody in the world that understands depression. There's nobody in the world that understands addiction. There's nobody in the world that understands whatever you're going through that he is fighting you with and you are losing. He will tell you that there is nobody else that understands that. Just keep your mouth shut and deal with it and go on. My God tells me, come to me, all ye who labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Now, how does he do that? How does he give us rest? He gives us rest through his word, but his word also tells me that we are the body of Christ. My word also tells me that we are to lift one another up. My word also tells me that we are to help one another out. And we're not really good at asking for help. And you know what else Satan tells us? Satan tells us, don't cry. Don't cry. That's none of your business. You might make him mad. You know, when we first get to know somebody, and maybe when you get married, I'm thinking back to when Karen and I first got married. We loved one another, we still do, but we're still learning about one another. How many of you have been married for a long time and are still learning about your spouse? I mean, maybe you've been married for a really long time, and maybe you know all there is to know. I don't know. Maybe I'll get there one day. But you're still learning about things that, passions that they have, that convictions that they have, things that make them angry, things that make them happy. You'll discover new things about them. And you know what? we think about that. You ever ask your spouse, are you all right? Knowing that they're not. And what do you get? Guys, I'm speaking from a guy's perspective, I'm fine. Right? Ladies, is that usually your go-to response? I'm fine. But guys, guess what our response is? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. Going to the barn. Going to the garage. There is something that possesses each of our minds. There is something that Satan knows how to weasel in and get to each of our minds and each of our spirits, and he tells us, don't share it. Keep your mouth shut about it. And you know what he does? That he puts us in his control. We are to not be under Satan's control in any way. In any shape, in any form, in any fashion. We are not to be under the control of Satan in any way. And if we forget to allow God in, then we are also going to forget to allow those that love us in. And then Satan's got us. Satan's got us. until we finally get so miserable that we either want to come out of it or want to go deeper down in that hole. There's choices. There's choices. We are the caretakers of one another, along with God. God's word can get us so far, but you know what? God is in heaven. God is seated in heaven, and Jesus is at the right hand of the Father. And you know what? I'm here in the flesh. Now, I'm not any greater than God. I'm not saying that, but my Bible tells me that I'm supposed to be His hand here on earth. And if I'm not checking on my brothers and sisters, if I don't ask them what's wrong, if I don't try to pry and intervene in some way, then what good am I to them? Next time that Satan tells you, you're butting in, tell Satan, shut up, I'm going to do it anyway. And the only response, you know what the worst response you can get is, I'm fine. Are you really? Because I don't think you are. Because I remember this person that used to be happy. I remember this person that used to be on fire for God. I remember this person that used to be entrenched in his Bible or her Bible. I remember this person that used to have tears and thoughts and feelings and passions, and now all I see is a hardened heart. I don't think you're fine. And you may not want to talk about it right now, but I'm here if you do. You know what? That means a lot to some. That means a lot to a lot of people. Doesn't it? To know that somebody is thinking about you. Because, see, Satan can get between us and God. Spiritually. Satan can. He has that ability, not forever, and he doesn't have a lockdown on us, but he has the ability to put up a wall, to put up a barrier between us and God, to tell us, don't pray about it, don't talk about it, don't think about it, just suffer through it. God tells me that I don't have to suffer through it. I don't have to suffer through anything. I got to endure afflictions here on this earth, but through that, knowing that there is a better life ahead. Satan wants to block us from that. He wants to put us in a bubble and say, this is it. This is your lot in life. And if it's rotten, it's because of something you did or something you said. And I just want you to sit over here and be miserable. We're not made to be miserable. We're not made to be miserable. If you're lost and you're here this morning and you are lost, or you are not where God wants you to be, let me tell you something. You're in that bubble. God has put you here this morning for a purpose and for a reason. If you are lost and you feel like God doesn't hear me, God doesn't listen to me, God doesn't care about me, God doesn't have a plan for me, you are wrong. Not because Britt says so, because God says so. And you may be drunk as a monkey, as the old saying goes. Not on anything out of the bottle, but on things of this world. Somebody somewhere has talked you into thinking that you got to live a worldly life. It's not popular to be a Christian, maybe. You know what? And that's where Satan attacks a lot of our youth. Satan attacks our youth in that way so much. That it's not popular to be a Christian. That it's not cool to be a Christian. That I can't live the life that I see on TV if I'm a Christian, and I can't live a life of happiness if I'm a Christian. Let me tell you something. I had more fun as a youth in Christ than I ever did when I was a youth that drifted back off into sin. The world is not fun. The world is not fun. Maybe you're sitting here and you're in a bubble this morning thinking that, well, this is my lot in life, and you know what? I just got to deal with it. When I dig out of this, I'm going to come to Christ. You'll never dig out of it alone. You'll never dig out of anything alone. If the thoughts that enter your mind this morning are that I don't need God and God doesn't care about me, then you're as drunk as anybody I've ever seen. You don't have a sober mind on you. We look at the word sober and we think, well, I'm all right, I'm not in the bottle. You don't have to be in the bottle. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion walking about, seeking whom he may devour. You're halfway down his throat. If you're here this morning, you're not all the way, but if you're of that mindset, then he's got you. I read in the Bible, you know it's funny that we're reading Peter here and it talks about a lion. Because earlier in the Bible I read about a man called Daniel. And this man called Daniel, he was a great man of faith. If you know anything about Daniel, Daniel was came with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and in that same book, and did great things to these young men. And Daniel was told that he couldn't pray anymore. And you know what he did? He prayed anyway. He didn't shut his doors. He didn't shut the world out. He said, well, you can tell me that if you want to, but I'm going to serve my God. He was sober-minded enough to know that the world told him one thing, but God told him another, and he was sober-minded enough to know that I'm going to follow my God. And they threw him in the lion's den overnight. Tricked the king, and the king threw him in the lion's den. And the king was truly worried because he liked Daniel. And you know what Daniel's faith did? Do you remember this story? Do you know this story? Do you know what Daniel's faith did? And he threw him into the lion's den. Lions, plural, den. And what did Daniel do when he got in the lion's den? He was fine. He was cool, calm, and collected. We would be a mess, wouldn't we? We would be a mess. And he lasted the whole night. He closed the mouths of the lions so they wouldn't get to him. And he lasted the whole night. So what's the secret? What's the key to being sober here? We talked about a lot of things this morning, but we come back to that point of being sober-minded. Being sober-minded. And I want to talk about just a few things here to end this morning, how we can be sober-minded. First thing and foremost, and the thing that we don't want to think about, the thing that we don't want to talk about, but the thing that is blatantly relevant to all of us, is this body's going to quit. It's going to quit. It's going to stop. Our ticker's going to stop ticking. Our brain's going to stop sending waves down our spinal cord. It's going to stop. Done. The end. Over. Stop. We don't like to think about it, do we? But it's true. We all know it's true. We don't like to talk about it. We don't like to talk about our own death. We don't like to think about our own death. We don't like to think about or talk about the deaths of others, do we? But it's going to stop. And when it stops, there are two options. These are sobering thoughts. Our body's going to quit. And when our body quits, there are two options. Heaven or hell. God or Satan. That's a sobering thought, isn't it? Let me give you another sobering thought this morning. The thing that all of you know, if you've heard me preach before at any length of time, that you know one of the verses that plagues me, one of the verses that I think about, not all those who cry, Lord, Lord, will enter in. Isn't that sobering this morning? I prophesied in your name. I cast out demons in your name. And I did all these things in your name, dear Lord. I never knew you. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. Verse 8, chapter 4, verse 8 says, and above all things have fervent charity or love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. You think about that verse in Corinthians. That verse in Corinthians this morning's on the Bible Gateway verse of the day. If I do all these things, but I don't have love, it doesn't matter. Did I do them out of personal need? Did I do them out of whatever gave me? But I didn't have love, it doesn't matter. That's a sobering thought this morning. Your body's going to quit, and you got two options. Heaven or hell. And then the final sobering thought is, we don't know when. We have no idea when. Let's go back about 3 months. We use Brother Ken this morning as an example. Let's go back about 3 months. Brother Ken had no idea. None. That the cancer that ravaged his pancreas and the other parts of his body was at work inside of him. He had no idea. Go back about 6 months ago. My Uncle Mike had no idea that there was a grapefruit-sized tumor in his lungs. Go home and look in the news about accidents. Somebody today somewhere in the United States died in an accident, and they had no clue that whoever is going to be involved in that accident with them just got in the car also. They had no clue. You don't know. But at the end of all things, it is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. The end of all things is at hand. You ever hear that song, Live Like You Were Dying? We should do that every day. There should be not a day that we have on earth that we just put in our time. There should be not a day that we have on earth that is a checkbox. Tuesday, check. Wednesday, check. You are not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are. Listening the other day to Mark Lowry, I've been listening to him some just for a laugh, and he said that he had a preacher when he was little, had a stroke and died in the pulpit. On his third point, he said. I may not make it out of this pulpit. I'm not guaranteed anything but to either go to heaven or hell when this body quits. That's all I'm guaranteed. That's it. Sober. Sober-minded. You know, we can have dreams and we can have thoughts and we can have ambitions, that's fine. But at the end of the day, if we always come back to the fact that God loves us, but He loves us enough to sit on a throne of judgment when this body quits. Look forward to tomorrow, but watch today. Watch today. Be sober. Be vigilant. Are you making the most of every day with God? And that's it. That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. I worry about a lot of people in my life, and oftentimes I worry about myself. I get to the point where we have a lot to do and we have a lot going on, and you know, the Bible talks about love and talks about charity and talks about loving one another, and part to do in the fact that's why my girls aren't here this morning. Preparation for this sermon, I talked to Karen last night. Ella had the opportunity to go spend with a friend, and this is one of her best friends, and Ella put in a big day yesterday, and I'm not saying this because she's my daughter, but she works hard. And I know where she stands with God. I know where she stands with God. And if we don't enjoy life a little bit, then that's a sad thing, isn't it? That's sad. Are you enjoying life? Do you have the sobriety of mind to know where you stand with God? That's what it all boils down to. Do you have the soberness of mind to know where you stand with God? The soberness of mind to tell Satan, I'm not going to worry about that today, or you're not going to steal another day of my life. Do you have the soberness of mind to stand and say, or to think to yourself and say, or to talk to your family and say, yes, I am a child of God, no questions asked. I love Him and He loves me. I am not perfect, but I'm going to do everything that I can every day of my life to show the love of Christ that Christ has shown me to others. I know that I'm not guaranteed another minute. I know that I'm not guaranteed another day. I know that I'm not guaranteed another month or another year. I know that I'm not guaranteed that. Do you know that? Do you know that? And I'm not, because I know that, and I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm going to live my life the way that Christ intended it. To be full of joy and to be full of love, to be content with the things that I have. Love my family, love my church, to assemble, to talk about God, to live a godly life. Are we sober this morning? Are we sober this morning in that fact? You know, we think about life and we think about a lot of things that are going on in the world today, and a lot of things we don't have control over. We don't have a bit of control over them, but I'll tell you the thing that I do have control over. My salvation. If I have control over nothing else in my life, I have control over my salvation. And that brings me a lot of comfort and a lot of joy to know that I do. Do you have control of yours this morning? Every head bowed this morning. Do you know where you stand with God? Are you sober in the mindset that I'm not guaranteed another minute? Do you need to come down and talk to the Lord this morning? To work out something with the Lord this morning? Something that's been on your heart, or something that has been on your mind, something that Satan has told you, you don't need to take that to him. He don't care. Let me tell you something, he's the only one that does care. Are you wrapped up in Satan? And has he told you you don't need to make that walk? You don't need to give your life to the Lord. It's not time yet. There is no time like the present. Today is the day of salvation. Is there anybody here this morning that wants to come pray before the Lord? Before the Lord God who created you for a higher purpose than just the purpose of this world. Is there anybody that would want to come this morning? Father God in heaven, we thank you, dear Lord, for your word this morning. We thank you, dear Father, for those that listen, dear Lord, and want to apply it to their life. All of us, dear God, including me, dear Father, help us to be reminded of the fact, dear Lord, that life is short. And that at the end of the day, dear Father, it doesn't matter what we've accomplished, what trophies we have in the case, or what accolades we have hanging on the wall, or what degrees we have, or what our bank account says, or what's in the driveway, or what's in the garage, or what's in the barn, or anything that matters, anything like that, dear Lord. But what that matters, dear Lord, is that our name is in the Lamb's Book of Life. That all the things, dear God, that we have here on earth that bring us joy and pleasure, dear Father, are nothing compared to the joys that you have prepared for us in heaven. That, dear Lord, that one day this earth will pass away, and dear Lord, that if we are with you, that if our name is in the Lamb's Book of Life, that we are going to experience a new heaven and a new earth. And that the years we put in here on earth, dear Lord, are but a glint, dear Lord, in eternity. Help us, dear Lord, to think about that every day and all things that we do. To live a better life, dear Lord, for you. Father, to make you greater and us less. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Appreciate your time and attention this morning. Siri again. Siri's amen this morning too. I'm telling you, that was good. I have a couple of announcements this morning. Next Sunday, you're going to have all kinds of opportunities for spaghetti. All kinds. Spaghetti dinner here next Sunday. Spaghetti, green beans, garlic bread, plain bread, salad, drinks, and desserts put on by the youth. The youth is going to take care of everything. Donations for Children's Church will be accepted. Children will be helping and serving. Well, not serving everybody, because I go through the line and get what you want, but children will be helping with refills and anything else that you need next Sunday after Sunday school. Also, next Sunday at the fire department from 11:30 to 3, the 4-H is having a spaghetti dinner. So, here's the plan. Don't eat Italian all week. Then eat lunch here. Go down there and get it for supper to take home. And then it'll be all good. Or just stop down there and make a donation. 4-H group is a wonderful organization. If you were a 4-H member, raise your hand. When you were a kid, it don't matter. I pledge my head to clear thinking, my heart's greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, my health to better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world. That's wonderful, isn't it? Go down there and help them out. If you don't want anything to eat, they'd appreciate any help that you can give them. March the 3rd, at 10 a.m., Vicki Bailey will be here. Share their mission trip. See, where did they go? Brazil. With a video or slideshow or something to that effect. To share the mission trip. Come out if you can and be in support. I'm looking forward to that. Ann needs volunteers for the end of the month for our coffee shop service to make desserts. If you're interested in that, see Ann. And we have a business meeting this Wednesday night, and then it's right here, men. The 14th. It's not just Thursday. Valentine's Day. Ladies too. Don't forget. I don't want to preach a sermon next Sunday morning on marriage and all that good stuff, divorce and nothing like that. Yeah, what shoulda, coulda done and didn't, yeah. I'll preach whatever God puts on my heart, but now, not out of necessity, I don't want to preach it, let me tell you that. No, we like to have a good time. Anything else that we missed this morning? All right. Let's be in prayer for one another. Let's be in prayer for all those who couldn't be here this morning. Oh gosh. Oh, okay. Somebody called me. Woo! I saw little legs going over the back of the pew. All right. Never mind. Sorry. Let's stand and be dismissed this morning. One more thing before we dismiss. Angie, I appreciate Angie doing the videos for us. If you know of anybody that would like a burnt copy of that can't get online to watch, let us know. Let me know, and we'll make it happen. Granny and Pat asked me maybe there are others so don't forget about our ministry there on, all the sermons are on YouTube. So if you know anybody that needs that, just let us know. Brother Leonard, will you dismiss us, please?
Thank you, Lord, for thank you. Thank you.